Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We are presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Dieter Kurtenbach, making his triumphant return to the show. Dieter is now over at the Bay Area News Group. He is the featured columnist over there. Just a tremendous, tremendous writer, a tremendous friend, and a tremendous human being who also has the tremendously named Daily Dieter podcast. So I mostly just wanted to get that in there. So how's it going, buddy?
This is off the rails already, man. Tremendous. This is tremendously off the rails. Thank you for plugging the podcast, though. I'll try to drop it. It doesn't slide into conversation very easily, unlike Game Theory, which is apparently a lot easier to get in there. I'm glowing right now. No one's described me in such happy terms in recent days. I usually get a lot of hate mail, so it's nice to hear that at least somebody likes me.
Well, it's a family atmosphere, Dieter. I know that you have family coming in for Thanksgiving. Does Heather have family coming in? Like, is it going to be a big old thing, or is it just going to be just the Kurtenbachs and your girlfriend?
It's going to be the Kurtenbachs and my girlfriend. I think we're about to host the latest annual passive aggressive Olympics here in Oakland, California. So it's going to be a good time. But everybody starts coming in on Tuesday. So I'm glad that we're getting this out of the way now, because I don't know if I'll be in as good of a mind frame in a week from now or a couple of days from now. You know how the holidays go. Man,
maybe we should have waited until Thursday to record.
No, because then I would be like, trade everybody. The NBA is bullshit. Nothing matters. That's where I would have been. I'm just fat and bloated, and I hate everything.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so at least you've caught me at a good time. By the way, we are doing another podcast where my car is in the shop. At some juncture, you have to stop calling me. You have like a sixth sense figuring out when my Hyundai Sonata is in an auto shop, because we've now done two where it's in a shop, though I did take the train home instead of waiting around a waiting room.
So I'm actually not talking to you in the random Hyundai. Like, what, you were in the Hyundai and what?
I was in the Van Nuys Hyundai.
Yeah.
The last time we talked. This is
Jesus Christ. By the way, the Van Nuys Hyundai for you when you lived in California was like an hour and a half drive.
No. Because I was in Culver City, so it was like a 20 to 30 minute drive. And
I guess you go at 405.
Yeah, and the alternative was going to the one by LAX, which like always had like a bunch of creepy dudes walking around. I was just kind of done with that one, so I went up to the Van Nuys one. This one up in the Bay Area is like somehow worse. It's like 42 car dealerships combined into one service center that doesn't know who you are. I'm fairly certain is going to lose my car, and the last time I brought it there, they totally fucked up the steering. I don't know how you fuck up the steering. Like, a Hyundai is supposed to never have to go into the shop, and like it hasn't. I needed my oil changed. I came back, and now it only goes right. So I'm having to like non-power steer it on the highways in the Bay Area. It's going great. So primed week. This is as good as you're going to get me. So let's get into it.
Oh my God. Well, that car is certainly an asset to you, and some of the players that we are going to be talking about today are assets to other teams.
Painful.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
That's amongst the most painful. You have a skill, my friend.
So we're going to be talking about NBA trade targets at this early juncture of the season. This is not the last time we're going to be talking about this on this podcast, but I feel like, we're 16, 17 games into the season for a lot of these teams. We're almost a quarter of the way through the year, and we've learned a lot about where teams kind of fit in the pecking order. So that means that there are going to be teams that are looking to buy, looking to sell, and it does seem like the NBA's trade period during the season has started to get earlier and earlier every single year to me. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, it sounds right. Just because the top-heavy teams, the league is so top-heavy in so many ways, and there are so many teams in the middle that are really just trying to get something to stick. And the earlier you can get at it, the better. I think I agree with your assessment. I think it's pretty clear which teams don't have it, which teams do have it, and there's a lot of teams right there in the middle that want to get ahead, and pretty much the only way to do that is to add some guys.
Well, like one thing I think that is happening as well is that I think teams have become better at asset valuation and understanding that, we can get this guy for 50 games as opposed to 25 games at the end of the year. And that actually just creates more value on what we're paying him throughout the course of the year and on the assets we're giving up for him at the course of the year. Because to be honest, trade, valuations aren't going to change all that much from right now until the trade deadline, just because, while you can say these players are more valuable now because you get them for a longer period of time, at the end of the day, the demand goes up so drastically around deadline time that you're still going to be paying a premium regardless.
Yeah, and then you look at it one step beyond that. It takes a while for a new guy to gel into a team. You're upsetting the equilibrium. Whether that equilibrium was a good thing or a bad thing is irrelevant. It does take some time. It takes 10, 15, 20 games sometimes to fit in a player, depending on the impact that they can have on a team. And the earlier you get it in, the more you can get into the groove later in the season. There's only kind of two kinds of trades. There's the flyer trades. We're going to do a tryout. We're going to see if this guy works, and maybe this is a long-term option for us, or maybe this is something that can, unlock something for our team. We're going to wing it. We got to, shake things up. And then there's the other one, which is we're getting a player that fits a specific need for this team, and that need can be as low as third-string center or as high as, superstar player. And it's those second both of them require a little bit of run-up time, but the latter trade is being made for March and April. And if you're making a trade for March and April, and then hopefully games beyond that, you want to get as much tread on the tire as possible. And so I do think that lends credence to the thought, and I'm not really sure how to quantify, I'm not really sure how to analyze it, but it does lend credence to the thought that this is happening sooner.
So let's kind of start with, for me, I would say the two biggest guys that I can see being on the market right now. We're still so early in the year that a lot of teams are pretty jumbled, but we can start to make assessments on who we think is going to be contending and who we think is not going to be contending. One of the teams that is in that big jumble is New Orleans, and I think DeMarcus Cousins is a name that's going to pop up for as long as they continue to sit in that jumble. Right now, I can't see a circumstance where the Pelicans trade DeMarcus Cousins just because they're 8-8. Yeah. They're battling for a playoff spot. They're really trying to, get things going. But come February, that might not be out of the question. DeMarcus Cousins has been one of the 10 best players in the NBA this year. I think that's pretty much inarguable. Mm-hmm. Where are we at with what should New Orleans do with him? What is their threshold for what their record looks like in February for where they should look to deal him? And what kind of return should they be looking for, given the fact that, again, this guy is like a half-year rental now?
Yeah, that's what makes it tricky. It's really difficult to determine sort of where New Orleans' bar of failure is. It's not as if they've had a lot of success in recent years. They made the playoffs 2 or 3 years ago as an 8th seed, so and that seemed like a high watermark for this team. When you look at you look at New Orleans and where they're at now, 8-8. If that sustains, if that's sort of the record going forward, and it's hard to say that it won't. I haven't seen any indication that they won't be an 8-8 team going forward, or a 500 team going forward. Then I don't think Cousins moves. But if they start dropping down and they start looking more like a 30-win team than a 50-win team, and if those are the two opposites that they can go at, and that's, I guess, a viable option, then New Orleans would have to be prudent in asset management and understanding their situation and try to get some return for Cousins. Now, I don't know if they have the wherewithal to have that kind of foresight or self-awareness or whatever. I don't think that this organization is run well enough that they'll be proactive in that manner. At the same time, you're looking for either young players who can develop into something better than they are right now, because no one's going to give up a bona fide superstar. But, a guy who's a project, or a guy who maybe is going to take 2 or 3 years because he's really young to get up into a quality role player, or perhaps even an all-star caliber player. You're looking for somebody like that as the cornerstone, and then a couple of draft picks. And I think it would have to include a first-round pick Of course, depending on which team you're making a deal with, and maybe a couple of seconds on top of it, or some role players that can fill space in the time being around Anthony Davis. But it's really hard to say with this Pelicans team because, I mean, when you're looking at a squad that, frankly, it made not a lot of sense to get DeMarcus Cousins, it becomes difficult to figure out how the hell they're going to separate from DeMarcus Cousins. This team doesn't operate on the same plane as every other franchise. They are, I think, still technically a subsidiary of the New Orleans Saints, and at a certain juncture, the Saints season is going so well, they might just forget that the Pelicans exist.
So, I guess that one thing I'm struggling with is, should they consider making DeMarcus Cousins the long-term centerpiece along with Anthony Davis, with the knowledge that they don't really have a lot of avenues to improve their situation due to the fact that Drew Holiday is going to be making a lot of money over the course of the next 4 to 5 years. Anthony Davis is signed long-term to a max deal. To get DeMarcus Cousins under contract, you're probably going to have to sign him to something resembling a max contract.
In which case, you can't get any better going forward. I mean, other than drafting well and being clever. You have your 3 cornerstone franchise guys in those 3.
And it's not like if they don't re-sign him, they have avenues to get better because they're so capped out right now that it's really hard for them to really even finagle around the edges. So if I was them and I was 500 going into the playoffs, or going into February, I guess, I would still probably be looking to move them. I think it's at that stage you would have had basically a full year of 500 basketball. And to be honest, right now, this team's net ratings does not really look like a 500 basketball team. I think they're 20th or 21st or so in net rating right now. Have one of the worst defenses in the NBA at a 110 defensive rating. I just don't really know how that improves. And if you're looking to try and get better while you have Anthony Davis under this long-term contract, I don't really know how they do that if they keep DeMarcus Cousins. So a part of this as well is...
But let me swing it the other way. I don't know how you get better if you keep DeMarcus Cousins. That makes perfect sense to me. Everything you said makes perfect sense to me. How do they get assets for DeMarcus Cousins?
That's where I was going to
make a deal? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
What teams can look at DeMarcus Cousins and say, okay, this guy makes sense. So I think Cleveland is the scenario that everyone looks at, right? Cleveland could potentially give up that Nets pick. They could give up. I mean, I don't think they want to give up Jay Crowder, but you could theoretically move Jay Crowder, and you can match contracts with Crowder and Amon Shumpert or something like that. Or you can or you can move Tristan Thompson to match contracts if you still don't want to play Anthony Davis every single minute at 5, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's Tristan Thompson, it's that Nets pick, and it's a wing asset. And that's what you do, and then you try and move. But Tristan, again, is under a long-term contract, so you're kind of in the same boat there anyway. You're just getting the Nets pick, and you're just doing something different,
Yeah, and the question I have is the Brooklyn pick enough? We all know it's a very valuable asset, and frankly, if you're just saying DeMarcus Cousins for the Brooklyn pick, you can justify that, especially when you consider the term of Cousins, contract. But if I'm the Pelicans, I want something a little more ready-made. Drew Holiday is ready to win now. Anthony Davis is capable of winning now. And if DeMarcus Cousins wasn't the guy who could win, help your team win now, while I understand getting younger, I would almost prefer to do just switch it up and do somebody who's more ready-made in the moment. And I don't know who that is. I don't know if you can get Carmelo Anthony. That doesn't make any sense for the Thunder. I mean, we're really going down a crazy wormhole with that.
Yeah, and then who are the other suitors? I don't think Milwaukee is really going to be interested all that much in DeMarcus Cousins. We'll talk about them in a minute because I think they could be interested in another guy. But
totally.
I don't really see them as suitors for Cousins. Miami, maybe you do Hassan Whiteside and a couple of other pieces. maybe
how does that even make the Pelicans better this year?
But like if you can get wings, though, I think that what they have to be looking for, they have to be looking for like a 3-for-1 deal, right? Mm-hmm. Like they need more depth. They need more wings that can actually play basketball right now.
Diversify their portfolio.
Right, exactly. They have to diversify their bonds, to quote Wu-Tang Financial. It's just hard for me to see how they do that. So like, I'm really struggling to find the team, right? Like Denver has taken care of its big man situation by getting Paul Millsap. They obviously have Nikola Jokic, and I don't think they want to grab more centers. Portland has Yusuf Nurkic, and I would think that they probably want to continue down that path, although they represent like a relatively intriguing one if they wanted to just dive all in. Like you trade Nurkic, you trade Mo Harkless, and you trade like maybe a Minu or something like that.
But you also have to have a third team involved.
Do you?
I mean, I don't see any benefit for the Pelicans adding a position lock 5. Like, say what you will about Cousins, he is a center, but at least he can stretch the floor. He can play wing-like minutes in a sense because he does have the ability to go behind the 3-point line now. Nurkic does not have that ability in any serious way, and I think it only, doubles down on the problem, which is that the Pelicans need to get more wings because they have 2 centers, and they need to trade one of those centers for a couple of wings. Nurkic can't be the cornerstone of that. And I have a hard time seeing in a trade market that is going to be flush with position-locked 5s, a hard time seeing Nurkic, who has been very good. And I think, his impact on the Blazers last year will get some teams sort of interested in things. But I have a hard time seeing that being a valuable trade chip for any squad in the NBA right now.
So I guess that we'll just finish this by saying there aren't a whole lot of options out there for Cousins to go to, and that makes me think he probably stays.
I think Cleveland's the only viable or only foreseeable option, and it all revolves around that Brooklyn pick, which right now, frankly, I think they're 6-10, like isn't all that hot.
Like, is a sneaky one like is San Antonio like someone that can do that?
Right. And I think San Antonio, just based on the list I have in front of me that you sent me before this started, like San Antonio, I think is a team that is going to be in a lot of these conversations. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, that might be the second best option. I think that's probably the right angle. But even then, I mean, what can they give up? What can they do to help the Pelicans in a very serious way? Because the Pelicans are a small market team. And you mentioned, like, well, if they're just going to be 500, like, the Pelicans are probably okay with being 500. 500 sells some tickets. Like, I know it's not the sexy thing, and everyone wants to either be the worst team in the NBA so you get a high draft pick or be a perennial championship contender. But, like, mediocrity, as we define it, isn't a terrible thing for a lot of teams that just need to make some damn money. And, like, clearly the Pelicans are a team that's a business interest-only team. And I just have a hard time seeing how the Pelicans organization, wherever that headquarters might be, can justify giving up like DeMarcus Cousins, who, again, by all accounts, is a top 10 player in the NBA right now, and a player who the Pelicans made a huge splash to get. How they could give him up for, like Danny Green. Yeah. You just can't do that.
Yeah, it's hard. Let's move on. Let's talk about DeAndre Jordan. The Clippers are out to 5-10 start. They do not look good right now.
No.
Just full stop. Like they actually have a little bit of a better net rating than the Pelicans do, which is good. But a lot of that came early in the year where they were playing super well, and they're coming off of a 15-point loss to a team in Charlotte that had lost like 8 games in a row before that, or 7 games in a row before that. Blake Griffin is playing at an incredibly high level. It has gone downhill a little bit since Milos Teodosic went out, since that killer start of the year that he had. Mm-hmm. This team, again, just seems ripe for a shakeup to me. If Blake is going to be healthy, I'm just very curious to see what the Clippers do. And below DeAndre Jordan on this list that I sent you, I also listed Patrick Beverley and Lou Williams as guys that I think teams could look at as well.
Totally.
Patrick Beverley has knee issues. I think that he is supposed to play tonight, but he's been kind of in and out of the lineup. Danilo Gallinari, I don't think anyone should be surprised that he's missed some time here and there.
Yeah.
Like I said, Milos Teodosic, there's not really any sort of timetable, I guess, for his return right now. This team, it's just flawed to the point where if I was them and I now have Blake Griffin under contract for 5 years, I would be looking to hit a reset button. And to me, DeAndre Jordan kind of sets that market for which they could hit a reset button.
No question, especially when you consider that he's going to get he would have to get a supermax in many senses to stick around in LA. And we can have that debate in a separate conversation.
I don't even think we need to have that debate. Like, I don't think he's worth the supermax.
Either do
he's
I.
He's a 35% guy. There's no way you can do that.
I think it would be general manager malpractice to give DeAndre Jordan the contract that he will certainly ask for.
And I love DeAndre. Like, I think he's been criminally underrated and under-discussed among elite-level centers in the NBA. The guy is a 3-time consecutive All-NBA player. And
still the weirdest stat.
It's a crazy stat, but we talk about him as just like, oh, yeah, I guess he's like a top 10 center in the NBA. He's legitimately probably one of the 5 most impactful defenders in the NBA due to the way he rebounds, the way he protects the rim, the way he can slide his feet out on the perimeter, and he provides an incredible sense of gravity due to the way he's able to finish in the pick and roll and play high-low with Blake Griffin. So, to me, DeAndre Jordan is not discussed nearly enough. I just don't think that you can pay him 35% of your salary cap and pay him $35 million a year.
Yeah, no, that would be terrible. So the question is, how do you get out from being put in a situation where you either overpay him drastically or lose him for nothing? And I mean, 2 teams that stand out to me, and we've mentioned this on previous, but I think Cleveland stands out, and I think Milwaukee stands out. And
those are
Cleveland.
my 2.
Yeah, with Cleveland, it's obvious. They need defense. DeAndre Jordan brings defense. And while I don't think that the Clippers would be getting anything of significant value back, save for perhaps the Brooklyn pick, which I would be really hard-pressed to throw in a trade for DeAndre Jordan. Depends on where the Nets are. But
I think there's a very easy move here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tristan Thompson and the Nets pick.
Yeah, I think that's the only move, frankly. And I would have a hard time if I was Cleveland tossing in that Brooklyn pick. That said, Cleveland really can't have it both ways. They need to be all in on LeBron every year. And while being all in, and that's the way that LeBron has set it up since he came back, with the way he's handled his contracts, with the way that he has forced his hand politically in that marketplace with the ownership, with the front office. The problem is when you are constantly all in, at some point the chickens have to come home to roost. And this team is getting worse every single year because of the all in to keep LeBron in town mentality. And I don't know when the levee breaks with that. I don't know. I have no idea where the tipping point is. I would imagine that the competent GM, and who knows if that's in place right now, would have said that would be last year, and we go no further. And if LeBron wants to leave, he wants to leave. But we can't continue to mortgage this house to keep him satisfied. And the Brooklyn pick is effectively, the underwriting on that, where you keep this Brooklyn pick, you have leverage to move forward. I mean, would Kevin Love be somebody worth moving? I mean, obviously the Cavs probably wouldn't have too much of an issue moving him, but would Kevin Love for DeAndre Jordan be something interesting for the Clippers? I mean, they don't seem to have any issue with having a shit ton of force.
Yeah, if I'm them, I'm not looking to do that. There's just there's no real upside to pairing Kevin Love with Blake Griffin.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think that the bigger problem is, what the hell is the Clippers' end game? Because clearly they're not going to be as good going forward. They're not going to be the team that they thought they were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. That's obviously done. To me,
how you do that is you get this Nets pick. I don't know if Cleveland would even offer it for DeAndre.
That's my point. I think that's where I'm stuck.
I think they probably would consider it. They would need to kind of try and figure out the way LeBron's leaning at the deadline, and DeAndre.
Good luck with that.
On some level. Yeah, I know. Like, I don't think it's going to happen, but like DeAndre, they'd also have his bird rights by trading for him, meaning they could re-sign him by going over the cap. That would be really important. If LeBron ended up staying, you'd have a very real way to go about building. I wouldn't be looking to trade the Nets pick at all. Like, I would be keeping it at this stage, but that's me, and I don't know that they feel the same way. I think that they're probably thinking we need to do what we can to win a title to keep LeBron, and that's a really complicated kind of idea, right?
Totally.
DeAndre totally changes their defense, which we know is the biggest issue the Cavs face right now. And for me, like, another part of this is, so if you trade Tristan Thompson, you know, you have to worry about backlash from Rich Paul, and you have to worry about backlash from, you know, the LeBron camp and everything, just because Tristan Thompson is that, you know, he is a Rich Paul client. But I can't really see Tristan Thompson being upset about going to LA.
No,
you know what I mean?
I think you can upsell that. You know, you can spin it that way.
And like, you know, you'd have to throw in something else too, but whatever. That's easy.
Yeah, I think it could work, but you just have to find two teams that are emotionally primed for a deal like this. I mean, when you look at it on the surface, Tristan Thompson and the Brooklyn pick for DeAndre Jordan makes a lot of sense for a team that needs to stay at least, you know, partially competitive to stay viable in the LA market, or as viable as they've been in the LA market, but also needs to keep an eye for the future. And they're going to try to, you know, have it both ways. The Cavs really can't have it both ways. But, man, giving up that Brooklyn pick is losing a big insurance policy. And, man, like, LeBron is inscrutable. He throws out so much misinformation that you have no idea where he actually stands. Losing both of them, losing both DeAndre and LeBron, which might not actually be the worst thing. I mean, losing LeBron's a terrible thing on its face. But, like, if you're going to lose LeBron, you're going to lose DeAndre. And you're then going to have to trade Kevin Love. Like, you can, I guess, wipe the slate clean in some ways after that. But then you don't have that pick. And I'm not sure how much that pick really jumpstarts a rebuild. The Cavs are screwed kind of either way. So I just have a hard time.
You would get rid of the Tristan Thompson long-term salary in this case, which is relatively helpful.
They would always get rid of the Tristan Thompson. Like, if LeBron goes, everybody's like, they're going to then spend the next calendar year trading everybody. Yeah. Like, they're going to bottom out. And that's the right move. You start your process. You hire Sam Hinkie, and you do the process 2.0 in Cleveland. That's not negotiable. So I guess it really does come down to risk management. Is it better to go all in and see if you can keep LeBron around, or do you keep one asset in the back chamber so that you can access it should it all go to shit? I don't know the right answer to that. I would probably, especially when you consider that, going all in every year hasn't done the Cavs any favors. I don't know. I honestly, this might be the only time that I don't feel like I have an answer to that. That is a shitty situation to be in.
Yeah. I don't either. I have zero answers to this question.
You probably just make the trade because fuck it. I mean, like that might be the answer. Just fuck it, make the trade. Like, at least to be cool.
So the other idea here is Milwaukee, and so with Milwaukee, you would have Eric Bledsoe already to help kind of make DeAndre feel comfortable. You would be pairing him with Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton. I think that would be your core four, right? Mm-hmm. And I think to get DeAndre, you'd probably have to give up Thon Maker for sure, and then maybe you'd have to give up John Henson too, just to kind of even out salaries.
Right.
And then, the swing piece is are you willing to give up Malcolm Brogdon?
I think that the Clippers would probably demand Brogdon.
I think they would too.
I think actually what they would do is they demand Middleton, get rebuffed,
They're not
and then demand Brogdon.
Yeah.
That's my point. And then demand Brogdon. Thon is an interesting piece. You can justify Thon as why the Clippers would make this trade. Brogdon's a fine player. I don't, he's got some upside still left, but he kind of came in ready-made in some senses. So he's not this high ceiling prospect. Thon is all ceiling, man. He's viable enough to play right now, but he's all potential. And that might be what the Clippers need. Instead of a draft pick, you have something that you can already see the fruit of some labor in, and you can still sell the fan base on this is only going to get so much better. And this guy could be better than DeAndre. And I think that's the argument that the Clippers have to make no matter who they trade. And that makes it difficult for them to maybe even justify a trade to Cleveland because, okay, well, they have this Nets pick. Well, that Nets pick might not even be in the top 10, considering how bad some of the teams around the NBA are right now. And the Nets have more wins than the Clippers as we currently speak. So,
yeah,
I do think that it will be a top 5 pick. Don't get me wrong, but and you'd be a better person to say that, certainly than I. I don't know what a top 5 if that's something you really, really want. I know you want a top 1 or 2 pick. Do you want a 3, 4, 5 pick in this draft? Is that something that you're willing to go all in on?
For me, it is. I would be okay with it. I think there's a pretty clear 5-person tier in this draft, and I would be fine with that as my key rebuilding piece. It's just I don't know if Cleveland's going to be willing to do that, and I don't know if Milwaukee's going to be willing to do that. Again, it's really hard to drive the marketplace with a center right now because so many teams have centers. So it's hard, man. I don't know. He's an interesting center. He's an interesting piece for a lot of teams, though.
And I asked the question of this: is giving up Thon? Okay, so we have.
I would be fine giving up Thon, by the way.
I think I would be fine giving up Thon too because I'm low on Thon. But at the same time, that is as good as an asset, trade wise, long term projected trade asset as you have in Milwaukee. And you look at what's going on in Milwaukee, DeAndre Jordan's coming from LA and he is all about LA. And now you're going to have to, listen, it's fun playing with Giannis and they have a pretty, Bledsoe's there and they have a pretty damn good team. And there's a lot of upside there, but shit, I don't know if you could re-sign DeAndre Jordan to play in Milwaukee, man. That's a hard sell. And then what'd you lose? You lost a viable player right now, and you lost your best long-term asset. And that's just not what a mid-tier, low-tier market team can do. It never really seems to work out for those teams when they try to go big. I think that the long-term play is the best one. It's not like the East is some juggernaut. Play the long con.
Yeah, and again, the swing piece is always Jabari Parker. What is Jabari when Jabari comes back? I hope he's really good because I really like his game, and I love the fact that he is so active in social matters, and he seems to really give a shit about his community and everything. I really root for that dude, but it's hard to come back from 2 straight knee injuries like this.
No question.
Let's talk real quick.
DeAndre would look awesome though in that defense, though.
Yeah, he'd look incredible.
Just another stupid long guy.
Yeah, he's exactly the kind of person that Milwaukee has valued in the past. That's why I throw them in here for him.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Lou Williams and Patrick Beverley really quickly. I think that they're useful pieces and just kind of knock out the Clippers here. I think they're useful pieces that the Clippers could look to move, and I think a lot of teams would have actually a ton of use for what those guys offer. Is there anyone who sticks out to you as a team that could really use one of those two?
Two. I would like Lou Williams on the Wizards. I think that he could provide something that off of that bench in terms of scoring and just kind of instant offense that they don't lack right now. And all of this with the caveat of they're just going to give up a 2nd-round pick or 2 second-round picks to get these guys, that they're not assets that are going to cost you anything significant in the short or the long term. And
I do think Beverley is a little bit expensive for what it's worth.
I don't disagree with that, but let's just throw it out there as this. We don't have to get too analytical in what it's going to cost you. I think the Thunder would be a really good place for Patrick Beverley, and I don't even know why. I just feel like that'd be a good place.
The Thunder is tough because I think Patrick Beverley costs a 1st-round pick. Pretty full stop. He's 2 years, $10 million left on his contract.
And then the Thunder are never going to do that.
Yeah, and the Thunder don't have a 1st-round pick to give up until 2022. I'm trying to think of there was one.
What about the Timberwolves? What about the Timberwolves for Patrick Beverley?
The Timberwolves would make a lot of sense. Tibbs would love that dude. They would not have their 1st-round pick until 2020 in all likelihood, which is maybe they would be willing to do that. The Clippers could be willing to consider, a 2020 first round pick and, maybe a 2018 second round pick. I think that's possible. At
that point for the Clippers, either it worked or you're already blowing it up, and that's just.
And you know what? Now that I think about it, Minnesota has Oklahoma City's first round pick this year too, so they could really do 2019, I think, as well, and probably be okay. I'm trying to think. There was one, like Washington is an interesting one. Washington, I think, could probably defend giving up their late first round pick for Lou Williams this year.
Okay. Same way that Houston did it last year.
Yeah, that he's exactly what they need. Like they just need someone off the bench who can run offense.
Yeah. And why not? And why not the Rockets get back into it? I don't think that they give up a first round pick again. But
I don't think the Rockets have any use for him. If Chris Paul coming back.
At this point, it's bolstering, a team to go up against the Warriors. Do they need him? No. Does he make them better? Yeah.
Does he help against the Warriors though? Whenever you're running backcourts of like Chris Paul, James Harden, and Eric Gordon.
No, I accumulate as many viable assets as possible. There's no necessary rhyme or reason. I mean, if you're playing the matchup game against the Warriors, you're going to lose. So what you got to do is you just have to try to blow them out every single minute you're on the court offensively. And, Lou Williams does that.
One team that I kind of really like now that I think about it?
Yeah.
Detroit.
Yeah, that'd be great. For who, Beverley or Lou?
I would say Lou Williams. Their offense has been solid this year, but I think they could use just that little extra boost off the bench, I don't think Ish Smith is going to shoot 50% from the field all year. Like that, no, I just don't know that's viable. He has been really, really good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But, like Langston Galloway has been really solid because he's knocking down threes right now at a 40% clip. He's a good defender. But, are you trusting Luke Kennard to come in and give you that offensive punch at some point later in the year?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe. They would need to be on pace for 50 wins in February, I think, to make that deal.
Yeah. No question. And at this point they might be. I mean, just given who they get to play all the time, it doesn't seem off the table. Two other teams real fast. I mean, obviously the Cavs would love to have a guy like Patrick Beverley. I don't think that they have the assets to get a guy like that, but he would help their defense, and they need defense. And in the other team, I honestly think, having watched the Sixers now twice or three times actually, it took some of my free time, the Sixers twice in the last 8 days. TJ McConnell's a nice enough kid, it seems, but Patrick Beverley as that backup point guard, that could do something for that Sixers team. Now, it's hard to say because, what will Fultz be when he comes back, if he comes back, but that would be a pretty serious upgrade to the second unit if the Sixers can go and get him. I'm not sure what they would have to give up. Certainly not worth, a high draft pick or anything like that, but Patrick Beverley. Yeah, Patrick Beverley on that 76ers team would be fun.
Yeah, kind of thinking through what they have in terms of their draft arsenal. They have obviously a lot of high-end picks. They have a ton of second-round picks. I think they have 4 second-round picks this year.
Yeah.
They have no outstanding picks. Could they realistically give up their own first-round pick if they're on pace to finish with the 20th overall pick this year?
I would have a really
Beverly. I think you could do that.
I think you could do it. I'd have a hard time doing it. That said, fuck it.
But think about that defense,
that might be what
though.
I come back to all the time.
You would be running
really
out of defense.
The second unit.
Yeah, you'd be running out of defense to close with Patrick Beverley, Robert Covington, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and whoever the hell you want to put out there. I guess you could put out JJ Redick, or you could put out someone big if you wanted to too. That's a really, really, really good closing lineup, I think.
And here's a question for that. I mean, and this is a transition, if you will, would a flyer on Jahlil Okafor in a second-round pick be able to get Patrick Beverley?
That's not a bad idea. I don't think so. I don't think Okafor has any value just because there's no long-term upside to getting Jahlil Okafor in a trade because he's an unrestricted free agent that you can only offer, I think, $6 million to next year per season. So, if you get him and he's good, I think he probably gets a little bit more than that. So,
no, you're right.
I don't know that I love that idea, but
that's what makes the whole Okafor thing so freaking tricky.
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe you could just toss him in. Like you just say, I mean, that could be your salary matcher. You could say Okafor and that 2018 first-round pick for Beverley.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I think that the Clippers would be in a good situation to consider just taking flyers on dudes.
Do we want to talk about, like, just a flyer for Okafor?
Yeah, let's talk about it, because I think that's kind of the most under-discussed big story this season. I know that sounds oxymoronic, but, like, Julius Okafor's just sitting there. And I know he's not very good, or at least not as good as we all thought he would be, but, like, just sitting there. Anyone want him? I mean, he can go anywhere.
Like, I mean,
is there any team that stands out to you as like, hey, maybe they should just send Jahlil Okafor here? Because I think that's where we are at this point. Like, they're just going to send him somewhere. There's no getting value back. Like, he has no value. So you're just sending him somewhere.
Do you just, like, does Memphis have interest maybe?
Maybe. I mean, I
like
don't
Brandon
know.
Wright's been okay this year.
I haven't heard anyone say anything about being interested in Jahlil Okafor. That's the worst
thing.
part.
So, like,
there's no leads.
Who do you go and look at? Like, I don't know.
I wrote this down. Feel free to laugh. Just let's give him the pop.
Yeah, I would love that. San Antonio has made a commitment to playing big. They're fine posting guys up. I think that makes total sense. Let's do it. Sure. Great.
I mean, what? Give him a bottom first round pick?
No. They're not going to get a first rounder.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, like, okay, here's 2 seconds. Have fun. Here's a second. Have fun. Here's a player to be named later. Have fun. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what its value is. I mean, it's nothing. As far as I'm concerned, it's zero.
Yeah, it's nothing.
Which is shocking to me, because it's not as if he's bad, but he's salvageable. I would still imagine. Like, he's not broken.
He's absolutely salvageable. He just has no upside if you get him and play him and he's good.
Yeah, but, like, the Spurs don't give a shit about that.
And like, the other thing with the Spurs is, too, he'll be limited just because they already have Pau Gasol. They already have LaMarcus Aldridge. So, like, that's the kind of situation where his numbers will be okay, but not too high. You know, like, maybe you can get him at that, like, 3 years, 18 million mark that, like, his max is. You know what I mean?
The whole point is, if you're giving up nothing and you only have to make a roster spot for him, and he gives you anything, like, what'd you give up? Even if you lose him at the end of the year, like, can he give you something? And San Antonio's system, the way they use their big men, like, I can see them sometime, if they make a move nowish, sometime in February or March, Jahlil Okafor actually helping them. Yeah. Coming off the bench, playing either in an Aldridge-style role or playing, backup minutes to Gasol. And, and giving them 10 solid minutes. And if you're giving up nothing, I mean, literally, if you're giving up nothing to get him, I mean, who gives a shit how much he's worth next year? You figure that out then. But, like, can this guy help you now? It's hard to say that he can, but, like, maybe San Antonio's really good at this stuff. Maybe they see something, the rest of the world doesn't.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Let's move on. Let's talk about Utah. Utah is in a tricky spot. They're 7-10 right now. Rudy Gobert is out for, I want to say, the next month or so. It might even be like
perhaps
5.
Even longer. Yeah.
Yeah, it might even be like a little bit longer, 5-6 weeks beyond that. Obviously, the defense has been as advertised. We thought they'd be really, really good. They are really good defensively. Offensively, they have been just as advertised. They're really rough offensively. Derrick Favors is coming up for free agency this year, in all likelihood. We'll see if he ends up deciding to go that route. I believe that he does actually. Does he have an option? Am I losing my mind?
You tell me.
I don't think he does. I think that his option was last year, now that I think about it.
Let me look at this. Yeah, I seem to remember this being a whole thing. I'm pulling him up on Sport Track right now.
Anyway.
Which, by the way, I love Sport Track. Eric Spoelstra Track, apparently. It's so difficult to type it in right. Like, this is a pet peeve of mine. Like, name it Sport Track or something. Because Spo Track, I don't know what it stands for, is a very difficult thing to, when you're thinking about sports contracts, very difficult to do it. He is a UFA after this year, by the way.
So, yeah, I would use Basketball Insiders. Shout out, good friend of the program, Eric Pincus.
Okay, fine. I like the chart. I like it's a nicer format.
Yeah, you're very particular in the things.
I'm big about UX.
Yeah. So Derrick Favors this year is averaging like 12 points, 6 rebounds a game. He doesn't look like the same Derrick Favors, though, that was, I don't want to say like electrifying in 2014 and like 2015 and maybe even like a bit into 2016, but he was really, really good.
Stuff. Yeah, he had people feeling stuff about him. I never really bought in personally, but that's, he had value at one point.
So he's another big guy that's just kind of out there on the market. Also, Ricky Rubio, I think, is potentially someone that could be moved just because, again, he'll be a free agent this summer. If they fall out of things, you can see him hitting the open market.
Yeah.
Do either of those two guys interest you if you're a contender?
No. I mean, no.
They both fit right around $12 to $13 million. Too,
yeah,
so they're not super far off.
Rubio's going to average out about 14.5 over the next 2 years. He's just shy of 15 next year's contract. Favors at $12 million this year.
Wait, is Rubio not a free agent this year?
Well, according to Basketball Insiders,
he's not. Sorry, I'm wrong about that.
Year left.
Yeah, maybe. So, they still could look to move him, just because I don't think the fit's been great. But
yeah, and it's hard to say. I mean, that team so revolves around Gobert. Rubio just doesn't. The book has been out on him for a long time. And, shocker, his hot shooting from the end of last year didn't continue into this year. Like, who could have seen that coming? I have an issue with Favors just because, he's kind of the modern-day tweener in the sense of I don't know what position he plays, and he's not really good at either of those positions. Like, he clearly can't be a stretch four, and I don't know if he is capable of really being he's not really a small ball five, but he's not really a banger in the post either. So, I don't know where to put him out there, honestly. So I would have a hard time taking $12 million on, which means that you got to, unless the Jazz are open for business in terms of taking bad salaries, I would have a hard time, the $6, $7, $8 million or whatever you'd have to pay him. When it's hard to sort of find a specific role for him. The only team, kind of the same thing with Okafor. He's not really a four. He's definitely not a four. And he's hard to put at the five because he's bad defensively and he's not big enough to do anything offensively in that game. So a lot of the same things with Favors. And I guess San Antonio would maybe be another fit as a backup guy, but I just have a hard time seeing them do that because there's just, it's so uninspiring. There's nothing there, and Rubio's not going to evolve. So you're just wasting your time and energy unless you really need a point guard who's okay at defending and pretty good at passing, but can't score a damn lick. If you need a healthy Derrick Rose from 3 or 4 years ago, that's your guy.
The Wizards don't really have the ability to salary match to get him.
Yeah.
Unless they were willing to take on Jan Mahinmi for some ungodly reason, which I don't think anyone is going to be willing to do that.
No.
The Wizards make a
Rubio,
ton of
right?
sense for Derrick Favors to me.
Favors, that's what I was thinking. That was the only team other than San Antonio who, again, you can just sort of apply any player to San Antonio and it's justified. Absolutely. The Wizards might be a fit there, because they do need a little something off of the bench. But Favors doesn't project as it's hard to make him a bench player. You know what I mean? The value of that salary is such. He's such a tweener in so many ways. You're going to have to give up.
Well, I think you'd be giving up a second round pick and a prospect is what my ideal salary matching a second round pick and a prospect.
It's hard to salary match.
It's hard to salary match him, yeah.
Unless the Jazz are just willing to take on a shit contract, which there's no incentive for them to do that. There really isn't, unless they see something that no one else sees, and I don't think that they think they're that clever.
The Knicks make sense to me, but
who the hell knows with them, man?
Well, the issue is again, they don't really have the salary matching guy. Kyle O'Quinn's been pretty good this year. Willie Hernan-Gomez is a prospect that I like. I like the idea of putting Favors next to Kristaps, though. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, because he can give you the rim protection that Favors lacks, but Favors can kind of do the center thing on offense while Kristaps floats on the outside. That makes some sense. I get that. But
again, though, they don't have this. Unless it's Courtney Lee, and I'm not trading Courtney Lee for a year of Derrick Favors.
Beyond that, the Jazz don't want Courtney Lee. I don't think they want him.
Probably not, no. Like, unless you were adding, like, Hernan Gomez and something like a second. No, I don't think they do.
There is a guy on the Jazz that I think we haven't mentioned that could get in. I think Joe Johnson is worthy of a quick conversation about maybe moving him. Like, ISO Joe still got something. And
that's a really good point, yeah.
He's a free agent at the end of the year. He's 10.5, but you can match that. If you got a guy who is going to be a free agent at the end of the year making about $10 million, and no names come to mind, but you're better at this than I am in that regard. ISO Joe can at least give you value in the short term for that. And he's kind of, made a living out of being a mercenary here for the last couple. So, I wouldn't be shocked to see ISO Joe playing in the playoffs as a bench scorer who you can just give the ball to and, make some offense happen.
He strikes me as more of a probable buyout guy. Like, it's hard to salary match Joe again,
Yeah. The Jazz have so many of these guys who are just like, man, there's not a lot of $10 million contracts in the NBA. The Jazz have, like, all of them.
Yeah, it's really hard to find those kind of guys. Like, maybe you don't want to take on more long-term. Maybe Utah would be willing to take on long-term money to get, like, an asset. Like, if they, for some reason, liked Jonas Valanciunas, which, again, you have Rudy Gobert. I don't know why you would do this, but if there's some asset out there that they like that's in that price range,
they would love a guy like Joe Johnson, a guy who can score off the bench. That's the problem. Like, he does fit what they're trying to do. The question is what they're trying to do a viable long-term option for that team. And again, it kind of goes back to the conversation we were having about the Pelicans. Like, is being mediocre that bad if you're the Utah Jazz? Like, you're not going to be competing for championships, but you also don't want to bottom out. You don't want to go all the way down, and it's really hard, and I would argue close to impossible to rebuild on the fly. You have to be so fortunate time and time again to be able to pull off something like that. And, Gobert has a chance if he develops his offensive game to be a superstar player in this league. I'd argue, he's already a defensive superstar, but he'll become an all-around superstar in some ways. You don't have really anybody next to him. I love Joe Ingles, but that doesn't do it for anybody.
By the way, Joe Ingles, another $12 million player.
Yeah, front-loaded contract, but he's under contract. Him and Gobert under contract until the end of the 2021 season. So you're locked into a lot. I mean, if you want to build around Donovan Mitchell, Joe Ingles, and Rudy Gobert, I think you need something more. And there's nothing on this roster right now with Dante Exum not fulfilling. I don't see anybody else on this roster that's going to get this team better than mediocre. So maybe they do try to find a way to get creative, get in some, high ceiling assets that, and move away from a guy. I don't know how they get rid of Favors, but like a guy like Alec Burks, a guy like Joe Johnson, maybe they can get something for Thabo Sefolosha, maybe from the Cavs, who could really use some defense.
Sefolosha's been good this year too.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I've liked him ever since he was on the Bulls way back in the day. Like Raul Neto, Rodney Hood, like, there are guys on this team that you can move. It's just really difficult because it'll tell us a lot about the way that the Jazz see themselves and sort of what their direction, or the direction they want to go is. Because right now they're sort of treading water, and I think that they might just be okay with that.
Yeah, that the Gordon Hayward decision, not to rehash that, but that was hard.
No. Yeah, and I think that they did a good job in bouncing back from that. I thought the Clippers did a good job in bouncing back from that. You're kind of fucked no matter what, so you might as well, try something. And the Jazz the Clippers went all in on offense, and the Jazz went all. I guess they got Beverley, and they got some assets out of that whole Houston situation, and the Jazz went all in on their defense, and it hasn't panned out, and injuries are a big reason why, frankly, but. Maybe you keep running it once Gobert comes back and you get the whole gang back together. But I wouldn't be opposed personally if I were a Jazz fan or somebody with the Jazz to mixing it up, because it's not as if this is some grand long-term vision of doubling and tripling down on defense. This was just a contingency plan that to this point hasn't worked. I'm not sure if it hasn't worked because of effort or because of whatever. If it hasn't worked, you're going to mix it up. No one's going to, hold the plan in exaltation as well. I can't believe we broke the plan. Like, it was a backup plan. It hasn't worked. Go to another backup plan. Maybe that works.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I don't really have like a strong idea on how to even totally adjust that roster, but I think that they would be best off trying to take advantage of the Rudy Gobert era by maybe just getting some small assets for some of their more veteran players that are going to be coming up on free agency over the next 1 to 2 years.
Just the Jazz clearly did a great job in identifying Donovan Mitchell, and I don't think that Donovan Mitchell turns into an all-star, but he's going to be a good player in this league, and he's a viable part of a nucleus. And Joe Ingles is a good member of the nucleus, and Rudy Gobert can be the guy that you build around, but you got to get like 2 or 3 more Ingleses and Mitchells in order to have a playoff team in the Western Conference. And just as the roster is broken down now, like, you should move some guys that aren't going to be with this team next year, or you're going to have to give, another $12 million to tread water. You should move some of those guys to see if you can find a guy who maybe is, the 4th member of that nucleus or the 5th member of that nucleus.
Let's go on ahead and do an ad, Dieter. You need holiday cash. I know where you can get it. MyBookie is the place to score serious cash on your sports predictions. Believe it or not, the holidays are just around the corner, and while that means plenty of parties, gifts, and spending, it also means there's lots of football, basketball, and hockey games you can score big on every day. I can't really emphasize enough how much I am enjoying the early part of the college basketball season. Shout out to Georgia Southern on Monday morning, covering against Missouri State. Man up and play like the pros on game day. You can play the money line, side or total. MyBookie is your hookup for all your betting needs and offers super fast payouts when you win. Where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on, and if you want to make money betting the games, you got to go to mybookie.ag. They're the only site that I recommend. I trust them, but you do not have to take my word for it. Check them out for yourself. They have odds on every matchup and a mobile site that makes wagering on your smartphone a breeze. Join now and MyBookie will match your deposit with up to a 50% bonus. Use the promo code GAMETHEORY, that's GAMETHEORY, to activate that offer. Visit mybookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid at MyBookie. Another pseudo-gambling ad coming up here. Listen up, Hoops fans. Basketball season is back, and now that your favorite hardwood heroes have returned to the action, it's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to the test and win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. At DraftKings, there are so many ways to play. You can choose from public contests with huge cash prizes to private contests where you compete against your friends. They're even getting beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill level. The best part, you get to draft a new team every day, and drafting the team is arguably the best part of fantasy sports. The only thing better is when you can win cash doing it. There are huge cash prizes and bragging rights only at DraftKings. Use the promo code CLNS at DraftKings.com to play free with your first deposit for your share of $10,000 in total prizes tonight. Don't wait. Use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com now to choose your lineup, and you can seriously cash in tonight. Again, that is code CLNS only at DraftKings.com. The game inside the game. Dieter, let's talk about the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Let's do that.
We're not going to talk about Lonzo Ball because I've talked about Lonzo Ball far too much this weekend.
But I want to. No, it's okay. We won't talk about Lonzo Ball.
But we are going to talk about a guy who I think has been terrific to start the year, Julius Randle. Julius Randle, to me, is kind of like the epitome of the post-hype, like sleeper guy who breaks out in his case, 4. Really, he's only played 3 full years, though. He's averaging 12 points a game, 7 rebounds, 2 assists in limited minutes this year, only 21 minutes per game. That means his per 36 numbers are 21 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, while shooting 55% of the field. Occasionally kind of canning a 3. He has some ugly mechanics, but they go wildly sometimes. 59.8 true shooting percentage. Really, really, really good defensive rebounder. Has always brought that to the table. My favorite fake trade out there right now is the Celtics using their disabled player exception to, add on a first-round pick and pick up Julius Randle.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I don't know if that's a good deal for the Lakers, though. First off,
well, the problem with the Lakers is the Lakers, I feel like, don't actually want to keep Randle. They want to try and get rid of his salary so they don't have to deal with the cap hold this summer.
Yeah, so I guess the big question with Randle is, are the Lakers? I totally agree with your sentiment that the Lakers just want to be done with it, get him off the books, set it up for LeBron, all that good stuff. I guess the question is, are they done with Julius Randle? Working with this team overall. Like, I get wanting to get rid of him, but are they totally cashed out on him? I'm not totally sure about that yet. I guess the minutes are a pretty good indication, but maybe this core does work. Maybe they find a way a clever way to keep him around. I don't know. How does this work out? Is there any way that they don't trade Julius Randle? Because there's no reason, I guess, not to trade him if they're totally hell-bent on him not being on this team next year.
Like, I don't think they're totally hell-bent on him not being on this team next year. I just feel like what ends up being the alternative result here, if they end up not doing something with him, is that they lose him for nothing. If they kind of end up in a waiting process
what,
some of these.
Okay, I guess the question is then, what can they get for him?
To me,
that's the big question.
I think that the idea of getting the Celtics late first this year and like a second round pick for Randle makes sense to me, at least. If you're that, and you don't have to take on any salary because the Celtics have this disabled player exception that they can fit him into. So, to me, that makes a lot of sense. Like, they don't like who are the Lakers going to get that's an expiring contract where, like, it's a deal that helps them in the future, which is ultimately what they're trying to do. Like, none of the Utah guys make sense in that regard.
Totally.
Like, I'm trying to think, like, I think there are teams out there who would find Randle to be an asset, but to me, where Randle is an asset is if you're already over the cap and you pick up his bird rights and restricted free agency rights and you just go over the cap and sign him for 4 years. Like, Boston using that disabled player exception to get another awesome asset in Randle, who, I think is certainly better than the guy that they're going to take at 27 overall or something like that. Makes a lot of sense to me. Like, go out and use that disabled player exception, not just for a short-term thing, because remember, they have to sign a player or trade for a player that only has 1 year left on their contract. This would be a nice way kind of around those rules because you'd be getting a guy with restricted free agency rights.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that Randle would look really good. You could play him next to Al Horford. This isn't some sort of a staggered thing. Like, I think that he obviously would really fit what the Celtics like to do. Even though he can't really shoot, he does have an inside-out game. He has the ability to put the ball on the floor. He would be a viable big for Brad Stevens' team. I'm going to be hard-pressed to come up with anything cleverer than that. That's a really good deal. Now, we do come back to the big elephant in the room. Would the Lakers, would Magic Johnson
trade with Boston?
Make a trade with Danny Ainge?
Yeah. I'm not sure that that's going to happen, and that's why I think it's like a fake trade and not something that will ever happen.
It's a great trade, though. It's legitimately a great fake trade.
Washington is another spot that makes, like, relative sense to me.
Yeah.
Just because
get a little something off the side gives you some thump as opposed to a lot of stretch. I mean, that makes sense. How would they make those? What could Washington give up? The late first? Do they have a late first this year?
Yeah, they have their late first. The problem is trying to find the salary match where they don't end up having to take on long-term salary. Like, it'd have to be like Tim Frazier and Mike Scott, basically. So,
yeah, I mean, that's probably, it sounds like a decent enough filler. Like, does that really hurt the Wizards in any way? No, I don't think so.
Probably not, no.
I like Tim Frazier, but, like, come on, you can do better than Tim Frazier. Well, the Pelicans gave up Tim Frazier for nothing, right?
Yeah, no, they got him for like a second round pick that was in like the 50s. So it's not like they were giving up a crazy asset.
Read into that a little bit more. The Pelicans, who didn't have enough players at one point this offseason, were more than willing to give up Frazier for next to nothing. So I don't know a lot about Tim Frazier, the person. I don't want to speculate too much, but, like, clearly people around the NBA, maybe the Pelicans are just morons, and that's a very viable option. But clearly people around the NBA don't think much about Frazier.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think of other spots too, like where they'd be looking for a long-term like combo forward off the bench. It's hard to find the need for that guy.
Exactly. It's hard
like
to find.
San Antonio maybe? Like could San Antonio do it? Again, like we keep coming back to San Antonio.
Any team that we can justify Ja Okafor playing for, we can easily justify Julius Randle playing for.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of similar, except Julius Randle actually does something. So maybe.
Let's move on and talk about Brook Lopez, and I guess we can also mention here Jordan Clarkson as well. Clarkson's just been really good to start the year, and it would make it easier for the Lakers if they could move that salary for like an expiring contract. Like I actually think Clarkson can help someone right now.
Totally. I was thinking about that earlier today.
Like I think Lopez's deal is too big. Like you have to salary match $22 million with expiring contracts. I don't think he goes anywhere.
And I have a hard time seeing. I mean, listen, he's a good offensive player and all, but he just doesn't give you enough on the defensive side in terms of rim protection, or really, he doesn't make your defense any better. It doesn't hurt it necessarily, but it doesn't make it any better. And really, I think that's what most teams would be looking for on the market. No one's, in this modern NBA, no one's like, if only we had a center who was average at defense but could pop a 3-point shot. Like that would unlock everything for us. Like teams know who they are. They build around centers in many ways. And with that contract being what it is, it's just not, unless it's a like for like, deal where, some teams give it up a defensive minded center so that they, can get an offensive minded center. And I just don't see any matches off the top of my head. Any of the teams that we mentioned for Lou Williams would be a viable option for Jordan Clarkson. There will be a lot of teams, I imagine, coming up here in the next couple of weeks that are looking for offense off the bench, and particularly sort of easy offense off the bench. And Lou might drive too hard of a bargain. And the Lakers have been kind of interested in moving Clarkson for a bit. He was found value in the second round. Had a really good rookie year. I don't know if he's really progressed at all since that rookie year. This would be them selling high, and I don't know. I mean, can they get a first round pick out of somebody for Jordan Clarkson? I think right now you have to argue that they could.
Yeah, you might be able to get a first rounder for Clarkson. I think that's possible. Like I'm trying to run through teams right now where, his offense off the bench or, maybe even in the starting lineup. I don't know that I would want to go that far. But, like, does Denver make sense?
Yeah, I'm looking at the big, thick middle here in the Western Conference, and I can justify Denver. I can justify New Orleans, even though I don't think that they can.
Denver doesn't really have the guy to give up, though.
Right. Memphis would really like to have a guy like Jordan Clarkson off the bench.
That's a good call.
Oklahoma City would love to have a guy like Jordan. Oh my God, would Oklahoma City love to have a guy like Jordan Clarkson off the bench, even though it wouldn't help them at all defensively. Like just having a guy.
Tyreek's been good for Memphis though this year. Now I think about it.
No, that's true. I mean, after that, it's tough.
Like I keep trying to think like of guys for the Knicks.
Toronto. Would Toronto be interested in a backup combo guard who can score? I mean,
maybe he kind of does fit that timeline too, because he expires at the same time of Lowry and Ibaka, and potentially DeRozan as well. So like that actually makes a little bit of sense. But the problem is that they don't really have the guy that is expiring either. Yeah,
it's Clarkson's a tough one to move, man. I can totally understand 100% why the Lakers would want to move off of it. Like, again, he hasn't progressed since his rookie year. He makes a good deal of money.
He's been a lot better this year. I think it's a little bit unfair to say he hasn't progressed.
I mean, have you seen his game evolve? Like, what is he doing this year that's different than any other year besides the shots going in?
I think he's just smarter at making decisions right now than he was last year even, too. And like, I know that he's worked hard on improving that jump shot, too. And finishing a little bit better at the rim as well. Like I think he is generally just better right now than he was last year. Like you even look at the turnover rates. Like he's never been a high turnover guy, but his problem is he makes poor decisions shooting the basketball, right? Like his turnovers come with bad shots, and I don't think he's taking as many bad shots.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Like here's a random one. Could Orlando?
Oh man, we're getting into it now.
Could Orlando do something like Shelvin Mack and Mario Hezonja?
Sure. If the Lakers want to get off of that, I mean, that would maybe Hezonja. I don't know what Hezonja could even get. I was thinking that Philly might be an option for him, just as like a backup Saric, a smaller backup Saric. I'm not sure that's not necessarily. I'm not sure that's what they want necessarily.
You need picks too, obviously. By the way, like I'm not just saying like only this, but like the Magic have all their picks. You know what? They also have I want to say the Lakers' second round pick. Like they have like a swap of some sort or something with the Lakers' second round pick, and they have the 2019 second round pick from Brooklyn, which you would think is going to be really valuable too. Mm-hmm. So like.
What about the Charlotte Hornets?
Well, the Hornets have Clarkson, or the Hornets have Malik Monk, and they are getting Nick Batum back now. So, like, I don't. Maybe. I mean, if you think Jordan Clarkson can play point guard,
yeah, I think he can.
I think he's better playing with someone on the ball.
I don't disagree with that, but I think he can play point guard.
Yeah, I guess he'd be better than what they have. I mean, the problem is always matching salaries. Yeah. With expirings, and I think Charlotte probably wants to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I mean, if the Pacers didn't decide that Lance Stevenson was their guy, I could justify that move. But now it's just weird. It's just weird.
I'm trying to think. Like, is there a chance that? Well, does Corey Joseph opt out? $7.9 million. Does he take that?
That's a tricky one.
I mean, like Indiana has all these non-guarantees. Like, are they willing to take on? Are they willing to trade Boyan and Darren Collison, not Darren Clarkson? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But like both those guys have small guarantees next year. Like Boyan is I think 1.5. Collison I think is like right around that. Maybe 2.5, maybe something like that.
That'd be tricky. That'd be tricky. That would be great. It'd be great for the Lakers. I think you can make those numbers work, but I don't know.
You'd clear $10 million at least, and then like if Indiana is willing to give up, I don't think they can give up their first round pick for him. But like maybe you could.
I don't think you're giving up anything on top of dump it. I think that if you move Clarkson, it's a straight dump. So you're not getting value back other than the salary matchers.
Yeah, I think that my favorite deal for Clarkson is Orlando for Shelvin Mack and Mario Hezonja's expiring deals, and that like 2019 Brooklyn second rounder.
Yeah, it's so uninspiring, but that's probably going to get the job done. I just it's stunning how far Mario Hezonja has fallen, man. Yeah. It is in 4 years, just like, who wants him? Like Julio Okafor and Hezonja just up for grabs. Anyone who wants them. In fact, we'll give you something else to take them. And they're on expiring deals. Jesus Christ.
We talked about Brook Lopez there for a minute. Let's talk about his brother, Robin Lopez. Strikes me as an interesting guy. We can also talk about Nikola Mirotic here as well. Do either of those two guys interest you in the slightest for anyone?
No.
Robin does for me. I don't know about Mirotic, but Robin, I think you could find the right spot.
Robin Lopez is a really good player. Like, this is lost in the shuffle of this full season. Really good player, is going to definitely help your team defensively, is going to help your team in rebounding, which a lot of teams should be looking for right now. And I think he helps offensively. He's a really well-rounded player, perennially underrated in my opinion, but he's on one of these deals that makes it really difficult. He's not good enough to justify high first-round pick from any team. Like he's not good enough justify the Brooklyn pick from the Cavs, which I think would be the best suitor for him, because if you are interested in DeAndre Jordan, you should absolutely 100% be interested in Robin Lopez. He's
just at a much cheaper price.
Much cheaper price. He's not as good. Maybe he's, depending on what.
Nowhere near as good. Let's just
nowhere near as good. Nowhere near as good defensively, but like it gives you a lot of the things that DeAndre Jordan does. Gives you a little bit of a pop and a pick and pop too. Gives you that stuff, and he's cheaper. And okay, there's absolute value in that, but it's not value worthy of the Brooklyn first round pick. I guess he's worth the bottom of a bottom first round pick probably, but like how many teams are going to be in a position to where they can match the salary of $12 million or so, and give up a first round asset, or want to give up a first round asset for a guy that just doesn't stimulate anyone or anything.
So like he doesn't fit. Like I was trying to find a way to get him to Golden State. I don't really think that the Warriors can do that. Like
no, I mean they would love to have him. He would really fit what they do. But $12 million, they are not in a position. They don't have any. Besides Andre Iguodala, they don't really have any middle ground contracts.
And we talked about Milwaukee with DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah,
that's interesting to me because I don't think they would have to give up any of like the Malcolm Brogdon, Thon Maker class. They declined Rashad Vaughn's option, so like he's not really an asset for them anymore. But like,
right.
I mean, would you be willing? I don't think they'd be willing to give up DJ Wilson. Would they?
No,
probably not.
I wouldn't personally. The thing is, as much as I think DeAndre Jordan would have been a great fit in Milwaukee, I don't think Robin Lopez provides sort of the same things that Milwaukee would have loved in having in DJ. He's not as long. He's not as mobile. He's not a guy who can really create gravity as he rolls to the rim. That's not his game. He's a pick and pop guy. He's a really good center on a heavy motion team, but he's not a good center in a high pick and roll offense. And just a lot of teams run high pick and roll offenses. I always will go back to Cleveland. Like they do run that motion. They still run pick and roll. Don't get me wrong, but like it's a motion offense. They're trying to move the ball around, and Lopez would kill there. But there's just no way. I just don't see, unless they want to, unless a second round pick in Amon Shumpert, a Chicago kid, is good enough to get that deal done. Like that ain't happening. The Bulls can do better. The Bulls suck at this, but like the Bulls can do better than that. Yeah, I guess theoretically.
And I feel like there are a couple spots for Nick Mirotić. Like if they could find the right salary matching again and get
that's tricky,
a decent asset out of it. But like I don't know that I want to spend too much time on the Bulls, to be honest.
Yeah,
like,
no one's like knocking at the door. It's like we got to get this Nick Mirotić guy. Like this, he's the key that unlocks everything. Like were any teams actually interested in Ryan Anderson this past offseason? Because like that's pretty much the same market for Nikola Mirotić.
And Mirotić though makes I think $7 million less on a contract that's 1 year shorter. So like that's valuable. It's just. I don't know, man. That's a tricky one.
Anderson
the other problem with Mirotić too is that he has a no trade clause. So, he gets to approve trades. So,
I would like to establish that, considering that he had his face broken by a teammate, and the Bulls seem to have sided with the teammate, I'm pretty sure he'll take a trade to anywhere right now.
That is true. I don't want to talk about the Bulls anymore. They're sad. Yeah. Let's talk about Phoenix, who is a little bit less sad, surprisingly.
Jesus Christ! The Phoenix Suns beat the Chicago Bulls. That happened. This is the nadir for Bulls fans. I would like to express that. This is as low as it gets.
So
lost to the Suns.
I think there are 4 guys on the Suns that you could make reasonable cases for. So Greg Monroe, for obvious reasons, he's a good low post scorer, smart passer, could actually help someone off the bench.
Totally, and another good option for Cleveland if they can get in on him.
Tyson Chandler, a veteran presence who you would need to be buying in on, like, caring defensively. Like, you'd have to think that he does not give a shit defensively right now, and that's why he's been as rough as he has been this year, and not the fact that he's 35 years old. I can see a team buying into that. I just don't know that I would be the person to buy into it.
I have a hard time justifying it in my own mind. I have to take some crazy pills to think that Tyson Chandler is going to unlock some shit for my team.
Jared Dudley, he is injured right now. He's going to be back, I think, relatively soon. He's someone that I think could make sense as a floor spacer, smart guy, really good teammate on quite a few different teams throughout the NBA.
Yeah.
And then the most interesting one from like a thought exercise perspective is Mike James on a 2-way contract currently, which is hilarious given the fact that he's averaging 11 points and 4 assists per game.
Yeah, he's looked good.
While being relatively valuable for the Phoenix Suns. So, what are any of your thoughts on those guys? Like, you can just riff off of anyone that you want to.
Well, I think that Phoenix is going to have a hard time trading Rowe. There's a reason that he's on their team. It's because that contract hasn't been tradable in 2 years, and Phoenix was in a desperate situation, so they took him on. I think he's a good buyout candidate, and if he's a buyout candidate, then that changes this marketplace drastically. In fact, flips it completely on its head. And we go back to Cleveland. Cleveland would be, I think, the best option. There's some other teams there. Jared Dudley's interesting because he's who is it? I totally just spaced out on this, but like Jared Dudley. Oh no, Jared Dudley is Channing Frye all over again, I think is the way I want to put it. Like, he still has another year left. It's at $9 million. Like, is there going to be any team looking at it? It's like, oh, well, he's a floor spacer who can come off the bench. And, I guess he actually does get better defensive minutes than Channing Frye, but he probably isn't as good of an offensive player as Channing Frye. Like, anyone want to take that on? Like, I guess maybe a team will get desperate enough and not have the foresight to realize, like, maybe this isn't worth it for next year. But I would have a hard time moving Jared Dudley. I think he's a nice guy and a quality player, but I would have a hard time advocating anyone trade for him. I just don't think that he changes anybody's calculus, and he's on a treading water contract. I already said my piece on Tyson Chandler. Mike James would be interesting. I'm actually surprised that he hasn't gotten more run. They're giving Ulis a lot of run in Phoenix right now, and it's kind of sad because every time I see Mike James, I don't know why I watch this game. I don't get to watch all that many out of market games having to cover the Warriors, but like I watched Mike James tear up the Brooklyn Nets, and I was like really impressed by how good Mike James was for a little guy. He'd be a great addition to pretty much any team, and given that he's on a 2-way, has a 2-way contract ever been like viably traded? Like, not yet. No. So
you're allowed to.
Yeah.
Just no one's happened yet. Like, I think he's gonna get signed first and foremost, and I have no idea what kind of deal Phoenix is going to get him under, but
give him the Jared Dudley deal.
Yeah, like he's going to sign with someone at some point. Like, he's really good.
Yeah. So I do not present myself to be an expert on the CBA, so I don't know how that one's handled. But I think Phoenix has a lot of assets right now that are, listen, if they could have moved them, or if there was a market for them, they would have been moved already. And with Dudley isn't a toxic asset or anything, but like Chandler, like who the hell wants Tyson Chandler? With the amount of centers that are on the market right now, like if you're trading for Tyson Chandler, you might as well just go out and get Robin Lopez or Brook Lopez or anyone. Just go get anyone other than Tyson Chandler. Like committing assets and money into hoping that Tyson Chandler re-engages at age 35 is too much. Like, there's a reason he's in Phoenix. He didn't sign with Phoenix thinking that they were going to contend. He's there for a very, very specific reason, which is to fade away.
So my favorite trade asset on the market, we're going to move on from Phoenix.
Yeah.
Right now is Spencer Dinwiddie.
Spencer Dinwiddie's good, man.
Like Spencer Dinwiddie is legitimately good.
Yeah, I watched him yesterday. He's good. Like, for a guy who's that size to be that good at putting the ball on the floor as a point guard, like he doesn't look like a point guard, but he is, and he has all the characteristics you need in a point guard. First off, I'm not sure if I'm Brooklyn, I necessarily want to give him up. Like, I think he's part of whatever core they're trying to build. But
so I'll explain why I think he's not. But go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. No. Feel free. I'd love to hear this.
Okay, so Spencer Dinwiddie, is averaging 11.7 points, 5.7 assists, 3 rebounds a game, 42% from 3 this year. Not finishing well at all inside. He's not a very explosive player. He's always going to have struggles doing that, basically. Mm-hmm. That's fine. No big deal.
Yeah, a lot of players like that.
For the next 2 years, he's at $1.5 million and then $1.6 million. He's an unrestricted free agent after that. Like, he is free to go wherever he wants because he's in his 4th year already, surprisingly. Mm-hmm. He was a second-round pick. There's nothing tying him to Brooklyn, basically.
Right.
And you think about who Brooklyn has right now. Brooklyn has D'Angelo Russell and Jeremy Lin out. They have Karis LeVert, who can handle the ball a little bit at his size. They have, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, who is capable of handling the ball at his size. They have a lot of these guys. Isaiah Whitehead, who I don't think is anything, but is
could be something.
A person
might as well figure it out
on their roster. Sean Kilpatrick can handle the ball a little bit with some size. Dinwiddie is better than those last few guys, but I kind of think like a team that is forward thinking could give up a first-round pick to have Spencer Dinwiddie for the next 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredibly valuable asset when you consider how little he costs. And with so many teams looking to upgrade without having to give anything up or anything serious, any current asset, don't want to give up any current asset, that's hyper valuable for, the teams that are contending. Which one of those stands out to you? Which team do you look at and say, this team really needs a backup point guard or a guy who can play combo and isn't in a position to really give up anything to get one?
Minnesota makes a good amount of sense to me. Again, they're in kind of a funky spot with their draft picks, but I might be willing to give up a late first rounder. Like if you think you're Minnesota and you're going to be, probably in the 20 to 30 range, I might be willing to give up a first rounder for a guy that I think can legitimately help me right now off the bench and who can take some minutes from Jeff Teague. And I can play late in games as a very switchable player next to Jimmy Butler and Andrew Wiggins and, whatever, Taj Gibson and Karl Towns. Like they could legit switch 1 through 5 in that scenario and be relatively okay defensively. I like that a lot. Like I would really consider doing that. You'd have him for 2 years at like no money whatsoever. Like he's getting paid peanuts, and that makes a lot of sense to me. At least.
Makes a lot of sense to me too.
Or like maybe what you do is you do Tyus Jones and like something else like that.
Yeah. I think that Brooklyn, even though they're about to come out of the hole. They need to get draft picks. They need to, help accumulate as much talent as possible. So if someone can give up a first for a player who, it's not like Spencer Dinwiddie is going to help him make the playoffs this year or next year or the year after that. If you can get a first-round pick out of them, that's found money, and they would be remiss to not do it. Even though I do think that Spencer Dinwiddie's a good guy to have on your team in terms of like culture and he's a good hard-nosed player. Like I wouldn't be opposed to the Nets keeping him. At the same time, sell high if you get the chance. A team that I really like.
If you're Orlando makes sense.
Orlando does make a lot of sense. I don't think it makes as much sense as Portland.
Portland makes a ton. That's a great one. Portland makes a ton of sense for something like this.
Needs a backup point guard, a guy who can play off of Lillard, doesn't have any room to maneuver, doesn't really give a shit about their draft picks.
You can play him with both CJ and Dame, sit one of them at once. That makes the most sense of something I've heard yet on this podcast.
Thank you. I try really hard, and most of the time I fail. But every now and again, tidbits. Yeah, I would love that deal for Portland. I think that here's the thing though, that contract is so good. That is such a valuable contract for the player that Spencer Dinwiddie is, and we're not trying to make him out to be some sort of all-star here, but like a valuable player. I think that's above reproach right now. He might take like a first and a second. There should be a bidding war on Spencer.
Or like a first and maybe a first and like Jake Layman, or like a first and Pat Connaughton has been kind of sneaky useful this year.
Right. Yeah, but like the Blazers want to hope that Pat Connaughton is sneaky useful going forward. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Maybe a Noah Vonleh as somebody that they can, as somebody that you can entice Brooklyn as a little bit of now and a little bit of later.
Vonleh's I wouldn't trade Vonleh because I like the fact that he provides size for them.
I wouldn't either, but like Caleb Swanigan's playing well, and they have Myers Leonard, they have Zach Collins, they have Ed Davis, they have Al-Farouq Aminu. Like, they're pretty loaded in the front court. Like, I think Vonleh has a lot of upside, but if I would think that there would be a lot of teams interested because there's no team that can't take on a player like Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah,
like every team can get him. So
like he could legitimately be the biggest. Like, if you would put him on the market, there would be a bidding war of 22 teams or something like that.
Like what? Like, why the hell wouldn't the Golden State Warriors be like, yeah, we'll give up a first-round draft pick for Spencer Dinwiddie? Do we need him? No, but like, shit. Like, we need value contracts year over year. This guy's on a minimum deal, effectively. Like, this is great. Like, we need guys like that. I just think that there should be his price might get driven up. Like, it's almost. I'm interested to see if Brooklyn does it, and if so, when they do it. Because right now would be a really good time to sell Spencer Dinwiddie before it starts all falling apart. Because truth be told, he is still Spencer Dinwiddie. But
I think he might legitimately be good now, though. Like, I wouldn't even say
he's good. No, he's good. He's good. But like, you know how much we talked about the Jay Crowder contract before he got traded? This is the new Drake. This is the new Jay Crowder contract.
It kind of is. Yeah, it's a really, really valuable deal. Real quick, DeMar Carroll. No one can touch that deal. But he's only at 2 years, $30 million left on that deal. He's a 38% 3-point shooter. He's relatively useful defensively now. Like, he's not what he was before, but like, he's still switchable.
15 mil is a lot of money for a guy that does not create offense, is not as good as he once was on defense. Like, DeMar Carroll, credit to DeMar Carroll. That dude cashed in. I've known DeMar for a long time. He nailed it. Him and Bartlestein nailed it. But any team that takes on DeMar, like, he got dumped to the Nets for a reason. Any team that takes on DeMar Carroll is either so desperate that they don't and they have no other options, or just don't know what the hell they're doing, because that's a lot of money for this year and next year for a guy that just doesn't add significant value to the team.
Yeah, that's true. Thaddeus Young in Indiana, any interest there? I mean, like, to me...
same thing as Derrick Favors in a lot of ways.
Kind of, but I think Thad's been a lot... I want to say a lot better. I think he's been better because he's more versatile defensively. Like, whereas Favors is a tweener at the 4-5, which is the bad tweener now. Right. Thad is more of a tweener. Like, he's probably just a true 4, but he can defend threes sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's true. What's his number? Where's he come in contract-wise?
I think it's like 12 or so. It's 14.
It's funny how all the guys
13 next year.
It's funny how all the guys need to get who are trying to get traded or are on the trade market all have these like $12 to $13 million, $10 to $14 million contracts. It's funny how that works. It's almost as if you shouldn't give those guys that contract in the first place, because if they're not good enough to necessitate a max, maybe you should. Maybe they don't have that much extreme value. I don't know. It's just I'm just
Well, I think that these guys too are just the most movable guys too.
No doubt.
Like, they're not necessarily difference makers that teams can't trade, but they're also useful pieces that other teams could have. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Any team stand out for you with Young? I'm looking up and down. I'm not seeing anything really pop out to me right now.
The Knicks are relatively interesting to me. Again, though, I don't know how they salary match.
No, because they've had that issue with a bunch of players that we brought up today.
Right.
What about what about getting weird and sending them to like a bad team?
I don't think a bad team would want to do that, though.
Okay. That's a fair review.
Like, does Memphis make sense?
I don't know. What's going on with JaMychal?
Like, he's back now, I think.
Okay. Well, he's kind of the same.
He's been back for like 3 games or so, and
I
mean,
What about Miami? They got a bunch of those
They've
guys.
been playing a lot of like Justice Winslow at the 4 lineups.
Yeah.
I mean,
they do want to do a 4-out with Whiteside, but
they do, and that makes, and like James Johnson has been okay. They've been kind of shifting him in and out of the starting lineup.
Now that I think about it, Favors to Miami might be interesting.
I thought about that too, but like they just signed Kelly Olynyk to that long-term deal.
Oh shit, I forgot about Kelly Olynyk. Jesus Christ, the Heat really haven't done very well with these contracts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean that was something that I when we did winners and losers over the summer, I called them a loser. I wasn't a big fan of their summer. Like Thaddeus Young, like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard. He's hard, and like Indiana probably wants to keep him so that they can continue to make this like pseudo playoff run.
Yeah. Indiana's a team that we haven't even discussed really as a buyer,
and we might want to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, could they take on Nick Mirotic?
Yes, they could. Do they want to?
I mean, if they're serious about trying to get to the playoffs this year...
That's their shtick, though. They're always serious about going to make the playoffs and nothing more.
Like TJ Leaf is playing real minutes for them, and he's been fine on offense, but there are still significant issues with TJ Leaf.
Well, I mean, that's great, because Nikola Mirotic is totally going to fix those defensive issues for the Indiana Pacers.
He's basically better TJ Leaf, though.
Yeah, more developed TJ Leaf.
Right.
Yeah. Jared Dudley might be interesting for Indiana.
Dudley makes a lot of sense there, too, I think. I like that a lot, too.
I think it'd be a bad trade to give up anything of value for Dudley, considering that, on a $10 million deal.
I mean, like, maybe you give up, like, EK. You give up, like, EK on a Bogu and the Al Jefferson deal or something like that.
Oh, man, I forgot about the Al Jefferson deal. Jeez.
Yeah, I don't know what the Pacers were really doing, but it's fine.
Does DeMarcus Carroll fit for the Pacers?
No, I think he has too much money.
Yeah.
I think he has too much money.
Yeah, nothing for Thaddeus Young. Thaddeus Young stays where he is.
The Hawks guys, Mike Muscala, Marco Bellinelli, Dwayne Dedman, Ersan Ilyasova. Basically...
If Nikola Mirotic isn't getting traded, Ersan Ilyasova, who is traded about 3 times a week, as far as I'm concerned, is not getting traded anymore. Market is...
Ersan is on an expiring deal at $6 million. Like you can do this later in the year. I think he's getting traded.
Okay. Well, he's been traded enough. He should be used to it by now. Indiana's a good option for him. For talking Ilyasova, Indiana's a good option.
By the way, he's not been very good, like in the limited minutes that he's played this year. But like, I think he's getting traded.
The idea of Ersan Ilyasova is a good idea. Who else did we mention? Who did we justify Mirotic to?
Indiana.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, Ersan, sure. Mike Muscala would make a little bit of sense, and maybe a little bit, but not a lot.
Where? I mean, what?
He makes he actually makes sense a lot of places because again, potentially expiring deal, like
potentially expiring deal, a 5 who can shoot the 3,
a little bit,
but like it's something. You can space the floor a little. Just looking up and down the lineup.
I swear to God, I'm gonna bring this name up. Do not laugh at me.
Okay.
Does Luke Babbitt make sense somewhere? He's been kind of good. He's been kind of good.
He gives you minutes. He's not
shooting 45% from 3.
Yeah, because that's going to stick.
He's a good shooter, though. Like,
no, I know, but come on, get real.
I think the crazier number is he's shooting 54% from 2.
What's Marco Bellinelli's contract?
He's expiring at $6 million.
That's 6. Yeah. Bellinelli's a good player. He might end up on the Spurs.
I think that makes sense. Like, is there any chance like he could end up in Golden State? Like they just
they have Nick Young, and Nick Young's been fine. Like
they like Nick Young too, don't they? Like the players.
I think that they enjoy the redemption of Nick. I think that it makes things interesting. Like I honestly think it's almost a bit of a sideshow. Like Nick Young's a great guy. Like I'm not beseeching Nick Young. Like I think that they get a kick out of the pretty woman thing going on there. Like they loved it with JaVale. Last year. And so they're just going to pick a project every year because, frankly, that's about all that keeps them engaged.
Dwayne Dedman is actually good at basketball.
Yes. Shocker how that worked.
Like 10 points, 8 rebounds a game, relatively solid defender, 60% from the field. Like, he could really help someone. Like, he isn't like $7 million a year. He could actually help someone, I think. Tricky, who that is. I mean,
tricky thing. I mean, listen.
I'm sorry, he's at 6, but also has a player option next year. So, like, he's potentially not just this year's money.
Cleveland.
Sure. Why not?
Cleveland can make that money match. The Hawks don't give a shit. Like, this is lock it up. This is a great thing. Because in worst case scenario, he opts in at 6.3.
And I guess the Cleveland can trade their pick this year now too, because they have the Nets pick.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean,
I
would not give up a first round pick for Dedmon though. Like, what am I thinking?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I like the final two names on this list though, because I don't like thinking about the Hawks. They make me sad. But
let's talk about Wes Matthews and Nerlens Noel. We threw out a Wes Matthews and Nerlens Noel for Kevin Love idea.
Yeah, how did that go? Do we have the final results on that?
I think it was probably a little bit more negative than positive, but I was surprised that there was any positivity about it.
Right. That's where Cavs fans are right now. I still love it. I still think it's a great idea.
I don't know if it's a great idea, but like I think it's...
No, it's a great idea.
Like, Sam. Sneaky useful. Like, they're both really good defenders. I think Wes Matthews would be better on the Cavs than he is with Dallas right now because he'd be engaged.
Here's the thing. Nerlens Noel has, like, negative value right now. Because not only is he not playing for Carlisle, like, he's been the worst player on a bad Mavs team. If you redeem him, then you've only cost yourself money. So, like,
Mavs he's really going somewhere else if you redeem him.
Yeah, like, the Mavs really should be giving him away for free. But, like, that's not good business, so they won't. Wes Matthews could help a lot of teams. But that contract's pretty rough. What is it at, like,
it's
14?
Like, he is 18 next year.
Jesus Christ, yeah. And he's opting in. No doubt about that.
I think he's opting in. I can definitely... But with Wes, I can see it being a situation where he's like, okay, I've made $100 million in my career. I want to win a title.
Well, he's only made... okay. Yeah, about 100. No. Well, yeah, he'll have made just
85 by the end of the year.
Okay. That's pretty good. He kept a lot of that because he played in Dallas. And, getting out at age 31, going into his age 32 season, looks a lot better than going on the free agent market again, 32, 33. You might be able to get, one last decent deal. Though I would have a hard time justifying giving him over $10 million again.
Well, I was going to say, could he justify declining that deal, declining the option on his contract to go for the mid-level, like $8.5 million to a winner?
That's probably where that seems like his path. So I guess the question is, who wants a? I
don't know if he's going to do that, by the way, either. Like, I have no idea. Like, he might just take the money.
But it seems like that would be. I would guess. I mean, those are his two options. He could take the money, and I'm not sure who would give it to him. But like, he could take the money, or he could do the journeyman thing, and go ring chasing. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Who needs an injury-prone two-way wing?
I got one name: Cleveland.
Yes, they do very much need an injury-prone. Lord knows they have the injury-prone covered on that team. They need the two-way now.
Really, it's just teams that need wings. Like, New Orleans would make sense. New Orleans doesn't have the salaries to do it.
They can't make that work. Yeah. Looking here.
It's hard to find the money, basically, with Wes.
Money's real tough.
Like, that's the hardest part with Wes Matthews. Can you find the money, and can you justify $18 million next year?
Well, who's a guy who's on like a $14 million expiring deal?
A guy on a $14 million expiring deal? I mean, Favors is at like 13.
Okay, I don't think the Jazz are.
I mean, you think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is at like 16?
No, I thought Kentavious signed for 20.
It might be something like that. I thought it was like 16 or 17.
But the Lakers aren't taking on.
They're not taking long-term money though.
Even if it is 1 year.
I'm just trying to think of dudes.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like Milwaukee has Dellavedova and Henson at like 12.
Yeah, but they don't need. They got Bledsoe already. They don't need
Wes Matthews. I mean, the Pacers have a few of those guys, but I don't think they're going to take them.
I don't think the Wizards need them.
I don't think the Wizards need them, and they don't have the deals to do it.
Charlotte doesn't need them.
I mean,
they can't pull. Well, they could probably.
Jonas Valanciunas.
Oh Jesus! Like, why would the Mavs do that?
I mean, like, they have 1 billion centers on their roster, but do they have any good centers?
Would Jonas Valanciunas be considered a good center? He'd be considered better.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, good. I think he's... I don't know if he's better than Nerlens, but it seems like the Nerlens project is not working there.
Here's an idea. Wes Matthews and a first-round pick. No, a protected first-round pick, and lay on the protections for DeAndre Jordan.
Why?
I don't know. Hey, it's just something that popped into my head, and I decided we need to have it on the permanent record.
I mean, like, does it?
They finally get
Does
him.
Toronto make sense?
Toronto makes sense in the fact that they'd be getting something they need and getting rid of something they don't want. It doesn't make sense from the Dallas perspective. Like, yeah. Jonas Valanciunas doesn't do jack squat. Like, Jonas Valanciunas is damn near untradeable. Like, you need Jonas Valanciunas is a salary dump. This is not.
I don't know if he's that bad, but he's not useful in Toronto for sure.
Well, if he's not useful in Toronto, where the hell is he going to be useful at that number? The reason that if Jonas Valanciunas is making $5 million a year, there wouldn't be a problem. But he isn't. There's the problem. That's why they're trying to dump him.
Yeah, Jonas's deal is a problem because he's got 15 million, 16 million, 17 million left.
He's got to turn into Nick Vukovic, and he's not going to get the run, and I don't think he has the ability to pull it off.
Yeah.
Like, those were two guys who went their separate way. Like, they were kind of along the exact same path. Not good enough defensively, sort of low post bangers, and Vukovic decided he was going to develop an inside-outside game, and he has. He's been really good this year, and is still pretty crap, and has kind of turned into a viable player for the Magic, and Jonas Valanciunas has not, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. I don't see. I mean, Wes Matthews would be nice on a lot of teams. I don't see a lot of teams that can take on Wes Matthews.
I don't think so either.
I wouldn't underestimate. I mean, I don't know how desperate Cleveland gets,
no.
and I don't know how high this Nets pick goes.
There's no way that they're getting the Nets pick for anything in Dallas.
Yeah, but they could give up Kevin Love and get up.
I'm all in on that idea.
It wasn't the worst idea we've had.
It was not the worst idea we've had.
The worst idea that we've had is DeAndre Jordan for Wes Matthews and an asset.
That one's up there.
It's up there. It's not good, but you know what? Neither are the Mavericks, so let's try something new.
Dieter, tell the people where they can find your work, your daily Dieter podcast, everything that you do over with the Bay Area News Group.
Yeah, so writing columns for the San Jose Mercury News and the East Bay Times here in Oakland, mostly on the Warriors, but 49ers, Raiders, a little bit of San Jose Sharks on the side. San Francisco Giants, it's a shit show over there right now with this Giancarlo Stanton thing. So talking about that all the time. Do the Daily Dieter podcast every morning. It is hosted by V Sporto, as far as I'm aware at the moment. We'll see how long. Yes, it's still hosted by V Sporto. And you can subscribe on iTunes. We're working on Stitcher, and it's up at the Mercury News website every morning. You can catch me there, and I'm doing Periscopes and all that other crap too. So if I didn't make you sick of me over the last 2 hours or so, there's a lot of other content for you to consume. And just hit me up on Twitter at Dkurtenbach.
Please go subscribe to the Game Theory podcast and then go subscribe to the Daily Dieter podcast over on Apple Podcasts, wherever else that you listen and consume podcasts. Please go on ahead and do that. Shout out to Michael Porter, who again is not playing, and I mostly just wanted to reinforce that point to Dieter, given the fact that he is a Missouri graduate.
Yeah.
Shout out
We're not
Michael
very
Porter.
good without him.
No, they are not. They are not very good without Michael Porter. That should not come as a surprise to anyone.
It's almost as if all of that preseason hype and all of that excitement that I showed after the first game win against Iowa State was unjustified. It's almost as if I put the cart before the horse.
Please go subscribe to The Athletic as well. Keep me employed over there. We'll be back at some point this week with a podcast from Coles Wicker. I think that we're only going to do 2 podcasts this week, though, just because of the Thanksgiving holiday. I would guess that next podcast will be out on Wednesday. Keep it locked here.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
We'll hopefully keep you guys enjoyed with some of the ridiculous conversations we have. So until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.